Good morning, everybody. All right, it looks like we're live both on Facebook and YouTube. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melco's application team, and we're doing our Design Shop Talk again today. We try to do these on a weekly basis to see what questions you might have. You can always email them ahead of time at applications@melco.com. While we're live, good morning. While we're live, type in on the comments. I'll try to keep track of them over on my second monitor over here. If you see me looking, that's what I'm staring at. I've got a second monitor up. Looks like we've got some folks on YouTube. Good morning. Coffee Powered Home, and I'm going to mispronounce your name. Maisha, I hope. I'm sorry. Anyway, good morning. All right, so we do have quite a few questions that were sent in ahead of time. Like I said, don't send them privately. Put them directly on the chat threads, and I'll periodically go and look and see what I've missed. All right, but I'll start off with the questions that were sent in ahead of time. Good morning in Alaska for Lorena and Gabby. I know Gabby's not in Alaska, I don't think. Oh no. Also, it sounds like, I'm sorry the pandemic took away from your business, but let's look at how we can, do some new stuff. All right. So these are some of the topics that were asked ahead of time that I'd have in the upcoming slides. Some folks wanted to know what we're going to talk about ahead of time. That was some of the feedback we got. I can only know what's asked ahead of time, so I put kind of a brief list here just so you get an overview of some of the stuff coming up. Good morning, Brian. All right. Oh, Maisha, I got your name right. Awesome. All right. Let's see. All right, can we give an example of how to do an embroidered curve around the neckline of a sweater? Absolutely. All right, so curve text is pretty easy in general with Design Shop. So first off, let's open up Design Shop and see what we've got. All right, I did get no, I don't want to recover anything. All right, so I did get a comment also ahead of time of making my icons bigger, and I also turned on this little feature so it's this little blinky thing so you guys can see where I'm pointing. Okay, so the text icon is over here. You can also use Control-T. And so when you do that, you click on it, then you left click on your screen, and you can type whatever it is you want. Okay, clearly this is not curved. So what do we do about that? All right, so if you double click on the text, you can also get to it up here in your property bar. See right here it says line. That's line type. I can change it to arc. Okay, well that's the wrong way. If I want it on the neckline of my sweater, I assume I want it to read this way and not that way, right? So how do you change that? Well, that's where you got to go into your properties here. Again, you double click, you can right click, go to properties. Any of that will work. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything else. Okay. All right. So when you do that, right here, you'll see there's a counterclockwise. So use my little thing here. All right. So the counterclockwise, and when I hit apply, that makes it go the opposite way, but I can also change the angle to be 180. All right. Now, if you don't know to change it to an 180, what's some other things you can do? Well, down here at the bottom of the screen, you'll see I've got these little rotation icons. So I can rotate it twice. Okay, either way. That will do a 180 turn. If you have older versions of Design Shop, these rotation icons aren't there. So how do you do it? Well, I can click on vertical mirror and horizontal mirror. So if you click on these guys once, it doesn't matter what order it's in, it'll go ahead and turn it over. Now, as far as what arc to do, you've got to measure that, or, I tend to print a lot of things 1-to-1. Or if you've got a ruler, you can measure the radius. So let's say the radius is 12. Well, you can again double click on it, go into its properties, down here, change the radius to 12. All right, that's probably not curved enough, but anyway, you get the idea. All right, so you can change it to whatever radius you want to match your particular garment. Like I said, I tend to print stuff 1-to-1 and just cut it out and see if it fits. Once it fits, then hoop and go. All right, so that was the first question we had, was putting curved text. There was a question on how to look up old videos to see what questions were asked. So We can, of course, we can do that on, let me go to the website. All right. So if you go to the Melco Service website, so it's melco-service.com, okay, and then click on the FAQ, Design Shop. Oop, it's not ship. Hey, it got it anyway. Huh. So Design Shop Talk episodes, if you click there, here, it's sometimes they run a little bit behind, if not, but you'll get an overall of what topics were generally covered. So you can always search through these to kind of just look for videos that you might want to look at. There's different links to the different videos that are referenced during that as well. So you can go back and look through old topics and see if any of these are videos that you want to go look. Sometimes, look, they even have the time codes in there. That's fun. Anyway, so that's where you would go to see what old things have been covered if you don't want to watch them all back, you know. There's a lot of them at this point. All right. But that's where you would go. What else do we have? When digitizing something that is, we did get you the link to the Design Shop Talk episodes where I just took you to. It's in the comments, so you'll see that momentarily. So this next one, when digitizing a fill, how do you know how much to compensate for basically the fact that embroidery shrinks, right? So I don't really have a great answer for that one, honestly. There's a bunch of digitizing techniques you can use to help minimize that effect. So finishing as you go. Let's say you're doing something really big, lion head or something like that. Rather than doing all the fill and then all the outlines, it's so much better if, as you do areas, like if you're working on the ear, do the ear, outline the ear. The smaller the area, the less likely you're going to have shifting, and the more likely everything's going to line up appropriately. So that's one just general consideration as you're digitizing to consider. So you basically finish as you go. That works for any design. It's just a good practice to get in the habit of doing. Another thing is make sure you're using good stabilizer and good underlay. If you use no underlay, things are going to move a lot more, all right, because you're not tying the fabric to the stabilizer to hold it in place as the embroidery goes on. So making sure you have good underlay. So pretty much good digitizing practices are going to minimize it. I tend to, here, let's go draw one. So let's say I have a fill. Okay, so I've got a fill and then I want a border on it. So I know I do this a lot, but people always ask, how did you do that so quick? Hold the shift key down. So first click the shape you want to border around. Turn it into 3D so you can see it. And let's zoom it. There we go. All right, so I clicked the shape. I'm going to hold my shift key on the keyboard. And then I'm going to click on the single line center. And voila, I've got a border. I tend to make them a little bolder because I like that satin look. And then also make sure it's more than, when I'm doing satin borders on it, I always just aim for the middle. Does it have to overlap that much? Probably not, but it's just what I like to do. Okay, so yeah, that's most of it. Let's see. There was a question on YouTube. Are there any other 3D puff, on Facebook. Are there any 3D puff ponts in Design Shop other than the ones that are listed in the drop-down list? Built into Design Shop, no. So the ones that are in the drop-down are the ones that are designed in. Short of that, you would need to digitize them yourself. We can get you a link to some of the resources. I know there are folks out there who do puff digitizing. That's kind of their specialty. But you would have to bring in one letter at a time sort of thing. But we can get you a link to how to digitize with puff. It really is a matter of making sure you're capping or pinching the ends and you don't leave anything open. Because remember, as you're sewing, the needle penetrations are what's cutting your puff, right? So yeah, we'll get you that link for puff digitizing. You can find it on that same Melco service site, clicking on the FAQ and just typing in puff, but we'll get you that. On YouTube, good morning. So, Tanetta Holland, hi. All right, yeah, so we've got you the link there, Maisha. So let's see, what other questions do we have? All right, we talked about these. So there was a question here. I've been trying to come up with an applique like this. How do I do it? Well, first off, this isn't actually a traditional embroidery applique. This is chenille. So it's done with a different machine altogether of creating a chenille. It's a special machine that does these loops. Now you can do a similar effect by using a micro chenille. So I know Scott and Nate did some videos on that. We'll get you the links for the micro chenille. But it really is a matter of setting up your machine to... I'm probably not supposed to explain it like this, but this is how it makes sense in my head. To basically overfeed the thread so that you get loops on top, right? So you're basically going to have loose embroidery on the top, and then you're going to tamp it down with some stitching over top to kind of hold it all together. So there's some really good videos that show you how to do that, show you the styles that you would use, that go into a lot of detail. So we'll get you that. But that's short of that, you of course can do micro chenille. So you basically, if you're going to try to achieve this look, you would want to sew with either a heavier thread like the I know Gunold and Madeira both make a acrylic or cotton wool, those sorts of things. Basically they look like yarn. Hi Scott. So they're just thicker, really thick threads. So you have to use larger needles, higher active feeds, special digitizing, and we do have some sample designs on that same link for you. All right. So, but that's how these are done. So yes, it's done without applique. These particular ones are all a chenille, done with a separate, not an embroidery machine. Okay. I'm trying to learn patches. My problem is the coverage around the corners doesn't look quite full. So these, you've got a square corner there. So in order to get that full, you're going to have to address it a little bit different, right? You're going to have to either go straight across, if you know, straight, and then another straight line so you have an overlap with your satin stitches. That would be one way to do it. You can curve that corner a little bit more so that your satin stitches cover a little bit better, where you don't have the material underneath trying to poke through. So let's look at digitizing some of those. And I see a question on YouTube that I'll get to in a second. All right, so let's see. Let's just pretend this is a patch. So this corner is what you're saying you're having some issues with. So what you can always do is select that point, hold your, I need to add some points first. So if I add a few points, now click on that one. So to add those points, I just left clicked on the wireframe. So now I'm going to select this middle point, hold my control key on my keyboard, and drag it. All right, so that curves it. Clearly I have to get rid of my fill at this point. But you'll notice as I drag that around, I can get a nice clean curve. See? All right, so that's one way you can do it. All right, another would be to have overlapping satin stitches. So let's say I've got this one going with a width of 40. I'm going to copy and paste that, rotate it 90, move it over here. So having it overlapping will also give you nice clean edges there. Okay, so that would be another way you could deal with it. So it's really, it's a personal preference what you want. If you want the sharp corner, you would do it one way. If you want to curve it, that's a pretty look as well. All right, so on YouTube, when I do a column input 2 and do one side, then go to the other side, my cursor gets a lot of lines fanning off of it. Yeah, so I would make sure that you're using your graphics card on your computer for the rendering on the screen. Right there, I think my driver, I use an NVIDIA card myself, and make sure it's actually tied to the program I'm using so that it uses the RAM on the graphics card to make sure it's updating fast enough for me. So that's generally what I always do, is make if I use my other monitor, it doesn't actually link correctly to my video card. So that's why it's always on this one over here. That would be the best thing I could suggest, would be to make sure you have a fast enough computer with a dedicated video card. We have another one typed in on YouTube. Trying to use the shadow feature on block font and then use a complex fill outline. I'm getting some bleed through the shadow onto the top stitching. Any of the satin letter. Any solutions? Trying to think what that's actually using a complex fill outline. Oh, so your outline is a complex fill. So it would be density, right? Because what you're seeing when the complex fill is going down, it's basically you're seeing what's underneath it, right? Between the rows of stitching. So decreasing the density on that complex fill might help. What else? They're using a topper on it. That would also help kind of cover up the stuff underneath, making sure the underlay for that complex fill is enough so that the stitches are sitting on top of the underlay rather than whatever underneath is popping through. So all of those would help. Okay. What else do we have? I'm trying to see, did I miss any other questions? No, not yet. Okay, cool. How do I block the nap on fluffy towels? All right. So this applies, I know we talked about it a lot around Christmas time too. It applies to, the fur on stockings, nap on towels, beanies. I've seen them used on pretty much anything that has texture to it, right? When you have a heavy texture, as it sews, it's easy for me to think about the stockings, right? The fur tries to eat your embroidery, so you don't see it as cleanly. So what do you do about that? Well, some basic techniques you can use regardless of digitizing is make sure you use a topper, right? Because when you use that topper, it covers it all up so that your embroidery can go in nice and clean, right? And all those little loose things aren't going to poke through as it's sewing, all right? Well, topper gets washed away, then what? Well, you need to make sure you have good digitizing. Your underlay is appropriate and those sorts of things. But other techniques you can always use is using a primer stitch, right? So that would be, I know lots of folks call it a different name, which I'm not going to use. But let's say I want to take this and sew it down, but I don't want to have the little loops of the towel, eating my name, right? Covering it up. So what do? Well, I would take this, go Object, Generate Basting Primer. You can also get to that by right-click, Operations, Generate Basting Primer. It all takes you to the same spot. And I'm going to change it to the primer stitch. You can change, the offset is how far away from the text or from the outline of your shape do you want this thing to go. So I just left it at the default. And what that's going to do, if I zoom in on it and make it a darker color so we could actually see it better, there you go. So you see that does a crosshatch, right? So that's a primer stitch. It's a global underlay, however you want to think about it. But it's just, you can see here, 2 fills with stitch directions going opposite to give you that crosshatch. And that's going to hold all those little loops down so that when you sew your text, it's going to go in on something nice and flat, and where the little loops, the fur, whatever it is, isn't going to encroach on your text. So using a primer stitch is a great way to do that. It's really fast. These stitches, I would tend to make the same color as your garment. So if you're sewing on a white towel, I would make these white. Basically, so it more blends in and kind of accentuates what you're actually wanting to be seen. This works with text, it works with designs. The primer stitch works on pretty much whatever you want it to. All right. We do have a nice video that Scott did on the primer stitch, so we'll try to get that linked for you. It goes into the basting and a whole bunch of other stuff as well, so we'll get that for you. All right, what other questions do we have? I'd like to do patches, but I only have DS Lite. Okay, so DS Lite, you would want to find a patch outline that you can use. I did want to point out that there is a font. So Melco. So you do have these Melco borders that in DesignShop Lite you can use. And notice when you look at them, they've got letters by them, lowercase a, for instance, here. If I type a lowercase a, maybe. There we go. I did an uppercase, but anyway. So you would have a shape there. All right, so you can use those, but you would be better suited to get yourself a, if you have DesignShop Lite, purchase a set of shapes that you like, 3-inch round, 3-inch square, whatever it is, patch shape you want. And then you could ask, then you can add whatever text you want to it. Now, another question you had was going through and how to make text bolder. That's going to be your pull offset. So if you're using basic text, bold. Oh, I'm on the wrong font. That's cute. I don't want that. Let's do that again. Block. Let's do basic block. All right. All right. Now let's say I want this bolder. What do you do about it? All right. So if I double click on it, you can also just use pull offset here. So by double clicking, you can see all the different things. It's under compensation. So I'm going to be really excessive. Don't do this, just so you can see the effect. All right, so I made a large change to it. You can see it made it bolder. So your pull offset's going to overstitch from your wireframe by however many points you say. So that's what you would use to make it bolder. Generally, 1 to 3 is generally plenty of offset. So that would be where I would, stay 1, 2, maybe 3. If you find yourself wanting to use things like that, maybe look at a different font. You might want to consider a different font rather than doing stuff like that. But anyway, that's how you would go ahead and make them bolder. All right. Is there a way to do gradients within DesignShop? Absolutely. So where's DesignShop? There it is. Why don't we just do a new file? I'm going to do a complex fill, which is this guy right here. And I'm going to select the box just to do a quick box. I hit escape to get out of it. Now I'm going to double click on that to go to this effects tab, turn on the custom density, blend, apply, and then I'm going to just click on a different color so you can see it. There. Now I have a gradient blend. If you don't want it to be a blend, you just want a gradient fill, well, you can do that too. Turn off the blend, and let me turn off the underlay so you can actually see it. And you can see it's kind of lighter here, and then the threads are closer together there. See that? So it's a gradient. Okay. So it just depends. Are you trying to blend it with another color? If so, that's cool. Do a different color. You can always play with these. There's different presets on there. You can also reverse them. So let's say you like that, but you want it reversed. Okay, you can go that way. You can change these numbers. My favorite thing to do is turn on auto apply, and then just add points and move them around. And I tend to make large movements at once so I can see what's changing, so I can adjust accordingly to whatever it is I'm trying to do. Okay. Cool. We did have, let's see, there was another question up here. What's the command to close a shape with a line stitch or a bean stitch? Shift enter. So if I come over here, so I'm clicking stuff, right? So I'm drawing a shape, really ugly one. And then I want to close it. Well, of course I can come and click near here. So if I click near there and hit enter, okay, cute. That worked, it closed it. But if you don't click near there, if you want it to close exactly, what do? Shift enter, it automatically closes it to the starting point. So holding the shift key down and hitting enter. All right, so there's that. Brian did point out the hardware accelerator. If you come over here to get to that, where is that? It's on the 3D right there. So you can try turning off or the enable hardware acceleration for the line shadowing that you see. So to get to that right here, the 3D button, if you right click on it, you can unclick that box and see if that helps you any. Okay, thanks, Brian. I always forget to mention that. All right, so out of this. Oh, I drew some ugly stuff. All right. What other questions do we have? We talked about the gradients. Is there a way to save colors for each design? Save it as an OFM. Are you talking about within DesignShop or within the OS? Within DesignShop, it's easy. I mean, if this is what I want, I would do File, Save As, save it as an OFM, and the colors will save in this file, so next time I open it, the colors are there. Now, if you're talking about on your machine in the OS, yes, you can save from there, but you would have to reload settings, so it's not ideal. It's usually better to save here and then do like auto select colors upon load or something like that when you go to the machine. That way it'll always, the colors will always be saved. You won't have to worry about it. So yeah, you would just come over here and, you know, color it however you want with whatever colors you want, save it as an OFM, and you're good to go. Next time you open it, those colors will be there. All right, how do you do an athletic block letter outline only? Okay, I did not see the attached where that question was asked, but I'm going to go to athletic block, type in something, there we go. That's too big. Whatever. Okay, so I've got some unpretty text at the moment, but I want to be outlines, right? So when doing outlines, you can use the auto border function, but the problem with that is if I come into the properties, go to auto borders, turn that on, it's cute, I'll get a border, I can change its size, yay, that's all good. But what you'll see is I can't get rid of the text on the inside, right? So to do that, what would you want to do? Well, first off, let me go turn this back off. All right, let's turn that off. All right, I'm just gonna hold, again, Shift is for adding, Control is for replacing. All right, so it's the same thing as using this change element button. If I click on the change element button, you can see there's an add or replace. So add is Shift, replace is Control. That's what it is. Using the change element type, this lets me look at what I want rather than having to know it. So let's say I want a single line center and I want to add it. Cool, I added some borders. I can change the colors, I can delete the text. Okay, so you can do things like that. If you want it to be a bean stitch instead of a satin stitch, that's cute too. Again, I can hold the Shift key down, click on that bean or on the walk stitch and change it to a bean. Give it another color, so you can do that. Any of that will let you create basically an outline version of it, and then you just delete the text that you used as the baseline for it. Okay. All right, any tips about digitizing on cardstock? So when you're working with cardstock, gosh, my kid is 15. He turned 15 a week ago. And I think when he was in kindergarten, we did this. So it's been a while. But I took cardstock and, you know, did Valentine's on it. Did a little robot holding a balloon that had a heart on it. It was, you know, cute. But digitizing on cardstock, really the only thing to remember is when you are sewing on a medium that's going to rip, right? Paper, even though it's cardstock, it's going to tear, right? So you don't want to jab it with 2,000 needle penetrations in a small area, because all you're going to do is tear it apart. So having open designs, things that use a lot of running stitches, are the way to go with that. So pretty much any light stitch design, red work type things, line work that you go back over a little bit so it shows up bold, those are the sorts of designs that are going to sew the best for it. But the key is just don't overdo it. The minute you start getting into heavy fills or anything like that, all you're going to be doing is tearing your paper apart. Okay, so that's what I would suggest. How do you fix long angles when you work with single lines? All right, so if I do a single line And let me turn off what's helping, so it'll be ugly. Go away. There we go. Apply, okay. Yeah, there we go. All right, so if I zoom in on this, you'll see that's way too many needle penetrations in this little area here, because what it's doing, it's trying to swing around, right? So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up having this look like a mushroom and not like a nice point. And you might even have holes in your garment down here. It's not going to be a pretty sight. So what do you do about it? Well, if I double click on this, I can go into this corner tab and enable different types of corners, which are going to sew out so pretty. So you have a cap, which changes all the stitches going side to side. You've got a miter, which there's two types of miters. There's this miter down the center, or there's this like little cap, basically two single line centers overlapping. Okay, so you can do that. If you don't have the corner tab, because that is level dependent, then you just have to digitize them, right? So if I wanted to digitize this sort, well, I'd do a single line, and then I would do another single line. Okay, I get the same look. I just digitize that by hand. If I want to do a miter, I would again, I'm guessing because I didn't change it. Oops, let's try that again. Yeah, like that. And like, all right, I did that wrong, but that's okay. It'll just be a different angle. There we go. Stop it, come back. All right, so that's a really ugly miter because I would generally have arch trace, but you see, you can create your own little miter there. Okay, so that's if you don't have the corners tab, which is under properties, but you can see the corner tab makes it so easy. You just come in here, go to corners, and select the type you want. If you turn them all on, it'll choose what it thinks is best. So here it thinks a cap for that particular angle is best. Okay, gosh, that's horrible, I'm sorry. All right, I don't know why I'm fixing this. That's better, a little better anyway. Okay. All right, any other question? Diane, hopefully that helps you. All right, we talked about athletic block, cardstock. White look good on dark fabrics. I don't know, it always looks pretty to me. I think what you're probably referencing is when the edges look a little bit rough along there. Like if you're doing something and it's got this kind of sawtooth look to it. That's typically more about the underlay and the digitizing than about anything else. If you're dealing with fabrics, like sometimes you'll find with twills that or any fabric that's got a very specific grain to it, that as the stitching goes in, it'll sew on one side of the grain and then on the other. So you'll get, particularly on darker fabrics is when you can see this, you can see kind of little jagged edges at times. Using a topper and using an edge walk really help with that, because the edge walk puts a line of stitching down the edges so that as your top stitch goes back and forth over, now rather than relying on the fabric and the grain of the fabric to hold up those threads, you've got this edge walk that's on top of it all to give it a nice clean straight edge. So I assume that's what you're asking about here, but I'm guessing. So if I got it wrong, let me know. And but you know, making sure you have an edge walk and you're using a topper, that really does help give it a nice clean look on it. What's the best needle and thread weight for handkerchiefs? It depends on what type of design you're doing. I'll be quite honest, I use 7511 needles for pretty much everything I do, unless I'm going tiny. If I'm going tiny, then I'm going to go down to a 65-9 needle. Or if I'm going on something super rugged, then I'll go up in size. But handkerchiefs are lightweight, so I would probably stay with a 7511 and a regular 40 weight thread, unless you're trying to do tiny little like handwriting type things. In that case, going down to a 60 weight thread and a 65-9 needle might be useful. It's also a good idea to think about what stabilizer you're using for that. I tend to use like the cut and wash. Vilene is kind of a generic name for it. It's a fibrous wash away that basically when it gets wet it goes away completely, but it's fibrous, which I like that because it doesn't stretch and it really lets the stitching go in nicely. Then I can cut it out, rinse it down, and I'll get a nice clean handkerchief in the end with no stabilizer left over. So using a few layers of like that cut and wash is really helpful. All right. Those were all of the questions that I had typed in. So let me see if I missed any on Facebook. Oh, we have close to 40 something, 50 people almost today. Hi all. Hope these are helpful. Okay, so I don't see anything there. Check YouTube. I don't see any others here. Awesome. So, oh, yes, another just typed in on, popped up on YouTube. I have a question about group names. Is it possible to split the names into 2 rows? No, not that I'm aware of. I'll have to look into that. I don't believe so. So, short of doing them in 2 rows. So when I go into group names over here, it's just going to show one list of names. It's just going to keep on going down and down and down. So I don't think you'll see them kind of split up here. Now, group names, are you talking about on the same file or just within this little selection box? If it's within the box, no, it's just going to be one big old long row. If you need to, it'd probably be better to do it as a CSV file that you import. And that way you can have however many rows you want to kind of keep track of everything. Okay. All right, y'all. We will, like I said, we try to do these on a every week basis. Next week, I think I'm going to try to do it on Thursday, unless something drastic comes up. So, but yeah, next week we'll aim for Thursday. So if you've got questions, think them up. I do post on both on Facebook and a few different groups. I post asking for questions. That's where I get my little PowerPoints from. So if you've got questions, once you see the little Design Shop picture come up, type in your questions and I'll get them added ahead of time. All right. I hope you guys enjoy these. I hope they're helpful. Let us know what other type things you want to learn and we'll try to get them there. The cross stitch is new to me. Can you do a mini on it? So we've done that a few times. The cross stitch is fun. Let's see. Where's my art for that? If I go to the C drive, C, designs, graphics. Where's graphics there? Where are my flowers? I don't have flowers. I had some flowers I did before. They were cute. I don't know. Let's do that one. All right, so if I select the graphic, I go down to cross stitch. Here, the thickness is how many stitches you're gonna, how many back and forth over it. You can choose the size of your box. I'm just gonna leave it here. You can select how it filters. The best thing I would suggest on that one is try different filters and see what it does. But once you hit apply, there you go. I've got a cross stitch design. It's kind of cute. Then you can always change it, add, remove. Up here they have where you can choose different colors. Let's say you want more colors, you can add additional colors. Let's say let's say I want to add a 5th color and I'm going to draw something on it. There we go. All right, so I can draw more things on there and it will add them. So yeah, that's the cross stitch tool. Like I said, it's a lot of fun. Up here you add your stitches. You can change it to be the different type of crosses. So best advice I could give you is play with it. See what it does. You know, what effects can you get? We did have a question that just came in on Facebook. What would you use for stabilizer when digitizing on a baby blanket so it's not so rough? I happen to really adore the 3.1 ounce cutaway that Madeira does. I think they call it super hefty weight. When it washes, it fluffs up and it's really soft. I like that. Plus, it's a really nice stabilizer. I mean, that stuff's great. All right, I'll be honest, my favorite stabilizer ever. Anyway, I would use that. You can always use like a cloud cover, which is after you do all your embroidery, you clean it all up, then you go iron on a separate material that adheres over the back of it, and it's most people refer to as cloud cover, but it's basically a really soft net that's got an adhesive on one side that when you iron it on, it makes it permanent, mostly permanent. You know, it comes apart over time, but that's also really soft, protects it, so you don't feel that stabilizer nor the thread. So those are kind of the two things I go to. I stay away from tearaways, but I really like the 3.1 ounce because it's fluffy and pretty. Sandra, when you use walk normal and shift around design, it throws me out of DDS. What would cause this? I have no idea. What I would suggest is if you have a design that it's doing that to, you can email it to applications@melco.com, and you can also try calling tech support and let them look at it. So those would be the two suggestions, because they can log in, watch you do it, and maybe go, oh, it's XYZ. Because I never have it throw me out for that. Shift enter. There we go. So I'm not sure. All right, y'all. Have a fantastic weekend. It's going to be obscenely cold here in Florida for us weak little Floridians who can't handle the cold. So it should be fun. Anyway, you guys enjoy your weekend. Like I said, I hope these are helpful for you. And let us know what questions you have, and we'll try to get them answered. And I will have to look back some more on the shadow lettering question because I'm not quite sure I answered that one completely. All right. You guys have a great weekend, and I will be back that was ridiculous. I will be back next week on Thursday, hopefully. All right. Talk to you then. Bye, everyone.